crummy wine. And another thing, if I don't get a better set next year, I'm going to ruin 2019 like I ruined you-know-who by switching into reactions. And furthermore, oh, hi everyone! Welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, Brian Hines, the Last Angry Geek. And yes, 2018 is shutting its doors, but we still have one more pull list, my monthly wrap-up of the comic books that came out in the month of December. And we're going to start with Uncanny X-Men, number 3. Well, Uncanny X-Men is back for the first time since the Bendis era ended, and And it's going to be weekly for the first 12 issues, and basically everyone who's currently or recently written an X-Men book is writing this title together. Matt Rosenberg, Kelly Thompson, Ed Brisson. And each week obviously has its own artist, and for issue 3 it's Yildiray Cinar. The basic crux of this story so far is that Multiple Man has come back after his miniseries resurrected him, and he's been attacking anti-mutant demonstrations, anti-mutant government officials. He's just kind of burst into his own one-man army and been attacking people, and the X-Men are trying to stop them. But in the meantime, Kitty Pryde, the current leader of the X-Men, was kidnapped and taken away somewhere with an anti-mutant senator and the mutant villain Apocalypse. They're all prisoners in some unknown location. Now, at the end of issue 12, Legion showed up, the star of the FX series, and Professor X's mentally ill but extremely powerful son. This was a pretty action-heavy issue with the X-Men subduing Multiple Man, returning to the mansion to confront Legion, and then finally being met by the Horsemen of Health, Wellness, and Bounty, a 4-mutant team of Omega Red, the Blob, Angel, and Magneto, but this time they're not working to terrorize humanity, they're working to make the world a better place. Now, this story's taken its time to build, and that's probably because since it's weekly, they don't feel they need to spell everything out at once, but the pace is a little slow for my taste. And it's pretty much picking up the threads of X-Men Red and X-Men Gold, with the mutants from that book forming a new team of X-Men, along with a few of the underutilized students at the Xavier Institute. And honestly, it only seems like the students are in there so they can be underused and underappreciated. They're tired of the X-Men always sending them away when things get dangerous. They're tired of always being on crowd control. They want to help because they see their answers as being the ones that work, the ones that are correct, while the X-Men's response of usually fighting is failing them at every opportunity in this book. So that rift between the old guard and the new guard is pretty interesting, but for the most part, this story has been a little dull. I think this book's biggest problem is its lack of star power, and I mean that two ways. I mean, the creative team is okay, it's competent, but there's no big names anchoring it. There's no A-list artists, there's no A-list writers. And the other problem is that the X-Men aren't really facing any big-name characters. Magneto is there, but he's a supporting villain. The big confrontation between this book, and I can reveal this because, like I said, it's weekly, so by now issue 8 is out. And the problem is it's Legion versus X-Man from the Age of Apocalypse, which was created by Legion, so Legion feels a sort of responsibility for X-Man being here and trying to reshape our reality into a paradise. And these are interesting characters, but they're C-list characters, let's be honest. And when you're relaunching a book as prestigious as Uncanny X-Men, you want to get the A-list creators, you want to get the A-list artists, you want to get the A-list writers, you want to get the A-list villains, and you want to get the A-list heroes. And I don't feel it's happening until like issue 13, or once this weekly arc wraps up, the next arc is going to bring in Wolverine and Cyclops back to the team, and that kind of feels more like classic X-Men. That feels like it's going to be important, but right now it feels like we're just taking what was left over and killing time with it until we really get to the real relaunch. This weekly thing, it just feels like it's treading water. I mean, Apocalypse is locked up in a basement, and he's one of the best villains they've got. My suggestion? Skip it. Nothing here is really enticing me, and the art is okay, but it's inconsistent. Wait for Cyclops and Wolverine to come back to the book, and hopefully then we'll get the relaunch we should have had with issue 1, but we'll see. Okay, that was week 1. For week 2, we have Shazam number 1, written by Jeff Johns and drawn by Dale Eaglesham. Now, Shazam is one of the few books still following up plot threads launched in the DCNU. With Rebirth, we kind of went back to the way things were, but this is the Shazam relaunch that was presented as a backstory in Justice League, written by Jeff Johns and drawn by Gary Frank. Johns is back writing this with Dale Eaglesham as the new regular artist. After being thoroughly unlikable in that backup tale, Shazam is now a much more likable character. Well, Shazam was always likable, but Billy Batson was really a brat, but he's mellowed out and come to accept his new family and his new life, and so he's a more positive Billy, which is really what Billy Batson should be. Not much really happens in this main story. The Marvel family breaks up, bank robbery. Billy and Mary argue over who's in charge, and there's a few good cliffhangers that spell out some upheaval in the world of magic and in Billy's own personal life. It's interesting enough that I'm going to come back and want to read more. That said, the main story is okay, but for me the real winner was the backup story, written by Jeff Johns and drawn by Sen Naito. It follows Mary Marvel and kind of deals with her life before getting adopted by this new foster family, and sets up a possible Hoppy Marvel. It's set in this really cute anime style that really works for the story being told, and I'd love to see more of that kind of backup for the other members of the Marvel family, so we get their backstory before they came into this family, and a little setup for the future as well. And that is essentially it. It's a setup issue. Jeff Johns is setting up the series. He's setting up the family. He's setting up some rivalries within it. And then there's some turmoil down the road that he sets up. As for the artist, Dale Eaglesham has long been an artist in search of a title. Ever since Villains United, it felt like his art didn't really suit the books he was on, be it Batman, be it Superman. I forget if I liked him on Sinestro. It's been a long time since I reviewed that title. But he does a very organic kind of post style that really hasn't worked too well in some of the books he's been on. But that said, it really does work well for Shazam. He has a great sense of movement, and he has this organic style that really works well for a bunch of children transformed into superheroes. There's a sense of kind of posing, which you think superhero children would do. So for once, Dale's art really works, and this is a good match. Jeff Johns, Dale Eaglesham, Shazam. My suggestion, buy this book. This is the right creators on the right title. Anything Jeff Johns writes is usually worth the read, and I'm just getting a good feel for this new version of the Marvel family. DC family. Shazam family. Please don't sue me, Marvel. Now for week 3, Detective Comics 944. This is a brand new creative team. Now, I said many times during the Rebirth era that Detective Comics was one of my 2 favorite DC titles. It was Batman forming a team of Gotham vigilantes and trying a new way to fight crime, and eventually broke down into a fight of philosophies between Batman and his cousin Batwoman. When the new creative team came in after that, I just left the book. There was no point in trying to follow it up. This was such a good run that I didn't think anything that followed could match that. That said, the new creative team of Peter Tomasi and Doug Mahnke wrote and drew my other favorite Rebirth title, Superman. I mean, Doug Mahnke was part of a rotating art team, but Peter Tomasi was the writer on that book. These are 2 great creators, and I'm sure they're going to give Detective Comics a great run. The story starts with the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne being investigated by Batman. Or at least 2 people who are made to look like Thomas and Martha Wayne. The first part of the story is all forensic CSI stuff with Batman and Gordon investigating this crime scene that seems set up just for Batman, although he can't admit that it was set up for him, since that would be admitting that he's Bruce Wayne. But then the second half is this bonkers action scene as a Bat ally is threatened by this terrific, strange monster that comes out of nowhere. And at the end, there's a teaser that a certain pasty-faced clown might be involved. This is perfectly toned Batman. Gotham is dark and foreboding and filled with boogeymen. Peter Tomasi's script is enticing and leaves me wanting more. There's good dialogue and then there's good action. And Doug Mahnke has gone from being a very stylized artist back in the day from The Mask and Major Bummer to a very detailed and precise artist in books like Green Lantern and Justice League. He's really one of the best artists working today. My suggestion? Buy this book. This is a great creative team, again, on a great title, and I think they're going to have a lot of fun with Batman. And finally, Week 4, it's Champions Annual number 1, written by Jim Zub and Nyla Nooksuk, and drawn by Marcus Toe. Now, this is the origin and backstory for the character that was created exclusively for the Champions. Everyone else was brought in from another book. This is the character of Snowguard, a Inuk teenager who inherits mystical powers. And this story does feature good art, but for the most part, annuals from Marvel are filler material. That said, this is a decent story that fleshes out her backstory as a child growing up as part of the Inuk tribe, and then explains why she named herself Snowguard. It's because those are 2 of her favorite Alpha Flight superheroes, and she grew up in Canada. It's her battling mystical creatures in her hometown. It's a decent enough story. But it's a Snowguard story, not a champion story. They just show up at the very end. Decent art, decent writing, and it does flesh out her backstory, but my suggestion, skip it. There's nothing really here that you need to read unless you're a diehard Snowguard fan, and I can't imagine there are many of those right now. maybe pick it up down the line as part of a 99-cent sale digitally, but there's no reason to go out and get this book. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed the pull list for 2018, and I hope you'll be back with us for 2019. Hey, like and subscribe. Tell your friends. I need more viewers. That's my goal for 2019, to get more people watching this show, and you can help. Also, check out my Patreon page, and hey, have a great new year, and I hope to see you back here. Until then, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, Brian Hines, the Last Angry Geek.